So it's April. This month we're going to be talking about brain health, right? Brett, this is something you are particularly passionate about, and just from me learning from you, I've grown to really appreciate it and understand just how important it is when it comes to making sure people are healthy and making sure that they're able to compete well, play well in their sport. And so the way we're going to do this is I'm just going to ask you questions. Since you are the brain health whiz around here, you're the brain behind all of the fancy equipment we have that we use to measure things. You're the brain behind the ways we intervene to help improve kids' brain health. So, in a general sense, what is brain health? What is a healthy brain?
A healthy brain is... I feel like I should put on like a dictionary hat or something. A healthy brain is a
Definition
brain that...
one.
Yeah, definition one. Noun. So a healthy brain is one that functions and fires in the most efficient way to maximize your capacity as an individual, whether that is intellectual brain health, cognitive brain health, performance brain health, and there's a lot of different components that really go into it. And I think that some of the bigger components that are missed with brain health is understanding how much the brain impacts everything we do. I have said it before, I'll say it again, I'll continue saying it until I learn otherwise. We do neurologic rehab on orthopedic patients. The brain controls everything. Just like when we talk about all the neural firing drills that when we're working with our patients and clients, it's just that we're trying to reprogram and repattern those different synapses. Muscle tissue is essentially stupid. It's like the lights. Either they're on or they're off. We want them to be on or off when we want them to be. Just kind of like those videos that you see on YouTube when people program all the holiday lights around their house to music. They want those lights to be on or off when they want them to the tune of the music. The artistry with movement that athletes use is somewhat symphonic in how they carry out the tune. Lots of big words. What that basically means is it's really, really cool to watch the up and down movements of athletes. Kind of like, you hear the music in action movies, the crescendos and the big booms and bangs, and then it gets really quiet and you can hear the suspense in the music. Equate that to the tensioning and preparation for an athlete going to do something really big or cool. Or like when somebody's running really fast, you hear the really fast music. And sometimes when there's a big change of direction or a big shift in the action, there's a big shift in music. And so the symphony and harmony of human movement is all a brain thing. And we can tap into that and change it with how we go about programming it. Now, back to your original question, how do we measure a healthy brain?
I haven't asked that yet.
Oh.
The first question is just, what is brain health?
Oh, what is brain health?
So you're getting into the next question I want to talk about.
Well, okay.
So before you go into that, real quick. In general, what are the signs of a healthy brain? Like when an athlete walks in here, or anyone really walks in, what are some of the signs of a healthy brain?
Well, I would say in the population we deal with, all of the brains we see are generally healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a lot of neurologic impairments. We don't have a lot of chronic neurologic illnesses. Certainly those things exist, and we're aware of them, and we'll deal with them if they do come in. But in general, most people are pretty okay. What I would say is some of the signs of an unhealthy brain are grossly compensated movement. So somebody that has really bad chronic limping, bad chronic posture. Those are signs that the brain is probably not functioning on all cylinders from a movement health standpoint. When we go through some of our testing, how well can they control end ranges? How well can they achieve end ranges? I guess it would be achieve and then control. All those are signs of how well the movement health within the brain health is. Certainly there are other chronic stressors, fatigue, mental health issues that we can see and talk about with folks that cause that chronic brain stress. But in general, most of the people who come in here are overall have a healthy brain, at least at a baseline.
Sure.
Now, we certainly have the concussions. It's a healthy brain, but it's an injured brain.
Right.
And I would say the same for the chronic stress. It's a healthy brain probably, but it's an injured brain. And so how do we then work to treat those injuries within the brain and those chronic illnesses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then before you can really start treating them or feel like you're treating them effectively, you have to be able to somehow measure brain function or just measure things to know what sorts of things you need to start attacking with your intervention, right? Mm-hmm. And so here we have quite a few tools we use to measure the brain and brain health. Mm-hmm. What are those things? And then as you explain what they are, just tell us what type of information they provide us.
Okay. So probably our easiest one to administer, the baseline information that just gives us a little bit of output on brain function, would be our VOMS testing, which is vestibular oculomotor screening. And we look at how well your eyes track, how well everything functions as a whole unit. There's a bunch of objective scoring with that that can give us good information on how well things are firing according to normative data, and gives us an idea of where we might need to intervene to get you back within either a baseline or to a optimal score. And the next one is using a device called Neural Check. Neural Check takes an ECG, which is electrocardiogram, and runs a bunch of algorithm tests and math based on your data and looks at various parts of your neurologic and biometric health. It looks one of the primary markers we like to look at in there is HRV, which is heart rate variability. It's a nice, well-researched score to tell us how chronically stressed your system is. Looking at your autonomic nervous system function, whether you sit more in the sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight, or the parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest, and then how well you can dance in between those two states. So autonomic nervous system function is vitally important for, I think, all of us in general and how we adapt to stressors around us. But the Neural Check is a device that helps us measure and see that. Going up a step further, looking at the reaction times, eye-hand coordination, more of the athletic performance type of testing, we have a device called Synaptech. And Synaptech measures your ability to focus, differentiate focus between near, far, depth perception, eye-hand coordination, spatial recognition, spatial awareness, and gives us scores and data based on, again, a bunch of norms to where you are, where some deficits are. And then there's, it has a bunch of training programs that go along with it, where we can help make some of those improvements. We also have some of our own other tools and tricks to improve some of those scores if we need to, but that's more of the high-end reaction time, the physical reaction time.
Yeah.
And then the most intricate and in-depth testing we have is EEG testing, which is electroencephalogram, which is looking at your brain waves. And we use the EEG with a P300 wave, which is your brain's ability to hear a sound, interpret that, and then elicit a motor output to the sound. Using oddball tones, and you click a mouse and it measures that reaction time, testing different parts of your brain power output. Just like with the ECG, the electrocardiogram with the heart, most people are familiar with the little squiggly lines, the P wave, QRS complex, T wave. Most people have seen those on medical shows or whatever, maybe in real life, who knows. We get similar wave data with the EEG that tells us a lot about how your brain power output is across the entire thing. There are a variety of tests that we can do with that, from memory tracking, identification, reaction, both physical and cognitive reaction. And it, again, compares to normative data and then where your brain health should be on an optimal level. It's one of those things, I like it. So there's a lot of talk on neuropsych testing and various types of screening from a symptoms checklist with concussions and head injuries. I really like this because you can't fake it. Somebody could say all zeros on some of the other things, but this is
checklist.
Yeah, you cannot fake the waves. Kind of like with the heart, somebody might be saying, "Oh, I have chest pain." Well, we can tell that it's probably not a heart issue based on how that is. So there's a lot of different ways to differentiate what true issues are, and those are the four big ones that we have here to measure the brain health.
Yeah. So once you've tested someone, like let's say you run them through the Neural Check,
Mm-hmm.
and you're about to continue the rehab plan or start the initial eval process, and you notice a couple of things on their data, such as a low HRV and maybe high delta wave activity compared to other brain waves.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of that information, then, what are some of the things you think about that will impact the way you provide care for that person?
Well, certainly there's a lot of different ways we can impact the nervous system, and it's well documented in the literature that part of the pain response with dry needling, it drives a big sympathetic nervous system response into a parasympathetic nervous system response. So we know that if somebody is largely sympathetic, by dry needling them, we're going to elicit ultimately a parasympathetic response. Yeah. We also look at breathing mechanics, because most of us, because of how we sit, how we talk, how we care about our daily lives, have pretty poor posture and breathing. So sometimes simply resetting the diaphragm and working on diaphragmatic breathing helps tremendously in lowering that stress threshold. We have another device called BrainTap that is photobiomodulation with guided meditation, which is a whole bunch of big words. Basically, it is a mastermind guru wizard guy talking in headphones, and it's got little blinky lights over your eyes, and it is absolute bliss.
Sends you to a land far, far away.
It's magical.
And it is great.
And we have data set after data set after data set that we have collected here of various interventions, whether it's just dry needling, whether it's just BrainTap, whether it's just breathing, where we are showing that decrease in sympathetic nervous system function.
I was going to say, now that we're talking about this, I just wanted to talk about the example of the football D lineman we had in here. When he came in first, and we neural checked him, his overall stress index score was out the roof. His autonomic nervous system regulation was way down, right? And I mean, we had our 2-hour treatment session with him. We did all the general things, the adjustment stuff, the dry needling.
He came in for hamstring stuff, right?
Right. And I mean, we didn't really touch the hamstrings in the appointment, but we made his hamstrings better. But anyways, after all the dry needling, then we brought him back in here and put him on the BrainTap with the Normatec compression sleeves on. And then we neural checked him again afterwards. And I mean, stress index score back within normal ranges. His autonomic nervous system regulation was...
And not just normal ranges, like at the low end.
Like low end, right? And his brain waves, I mean, he went from being very high delta, which delta waves are what? Your deep sleep waves, and then also more of, if you have a higher delta wave frequency, or is that the right word? Or, then you're typically in more of a stressed state, like a chronic stress state, right?
Yeah.
You typically want most of the brainwave activity to be fairly even, if not more beta wave, right? Because beta is like your normal everyday processing, having a conversation, that sort of thing.
Sure.
And after we did all of that and then neural checked him again, I mean, his brainwave regulation went to like pretty even. I mean, it wasn't like super high in beta, but I mean, delta significantly decreased, and all the other brainwaves got some love too. And I mean, him leaving here from that first session, he could tell the big changes, not only physically, but like mentally and emotionally, which were huge for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a couple others there that we can use: the intermittent compression with Normatec, just high intensity corrective exercise will go from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. It's well documented by a lot of people. If you're angry or upset, go for a walk. If you're still angry or upset, keep walking. It's exercise is good for the mood and for the brain. So we use exercise a lot. Certainly there's a lot of different tools that we have to help drive that parasympathetic function. From a corrective standpoint, with the VOMS testing or the Synaptech, we have a variety of different reaction drills, balance training, eye training, vestibular therapy drills that can help reset a lot of those scores. There are some home programs that we can send with people for homework. There's a variety of foot drills that we implement. All hail toga. We have regular toga parties in here, not the kind you're probably thinking.
Better,
way better. We have another laser device that uses infrared and red laser for neurologic reset. And then there are some other supplement interventions that we sometimes recommend to assist in balancing out the brain function as well. So we have a ton of tools at our disposal here within the office to normalize the function that we find with all of our different testing.
Yeah. And so when it comes to how we monitor the brain, how we treat the brain and everything, in my mind, sometimes I think of some of this stuff as like an extra. You can do rehab and interventions, but you can also do brain stuff, which makes it even better. But I think since working here and being around you and everything, I think it's foolish of me to think of this brain health stuff being like an extra thing, like an add-on thing, versus the brain health stuff being a whole part of how we treat the human being. Like, it doesn't matter if they've got a hamstring strain. You need to treat the brain as well as the physical injury.
Well, the hamstring doesn't work unless the brain tells it to work. So, you have to treat the brain. Obviously you go into the short arc reflexes and the reflex, the short arc reflexes as a protective mechanism within the muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs. That happens in the peripheral nervous system, not within the central nervous system, but in general, the overall movement and movement control happens in the brain, and the signal is sent from the brain to the muscle. To do its thing.
And so towards the end, you mentioned some things that we do to help improve brain function, right? But I would also say a big part of what we do here now, what you're really good at, is also educating our clients on the things that are detrimental to their brain health. Because sometimes you can take something out of your life or your routine or whatever, that improves your brain health more than if you kept doing those habits and then came in here and did like Synaptech or VOMS training or brain tap, right? Like there are certain things you got to cut out as well as certain things you can do. In terms of those things that people can cut out or do better, I know we talk a lot about alcohol consumption, drug use, sleep, the amount of sleep they're getting, time behind the screen, the type of food they're eating, right? Like all of those things tie in. And I think it's one of those things too where we can do all the fancy brain health stuff, tools here, but if you're still doing some of those things, there's only so much improvement you can get. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's cumulative load and effect. It's like we talked about in one of the last party time talks about load management. Everything counts, and the nicotine use, obviously vaping is way up, alcohol use, all of the things, and all of those have a negative impact on the developing brain, certainly, and I get it. Once people are adults and want to make those decisions, whatever. But especially for the teenagers and the college age, if you want to maximize performance, you have to minimize some of the other things, and those are all toxins. And we wouldn't knowingly and willingly put down toxins on our lawn and expect it to be nice and green.
Yeah.
So, we're not willingly going to eat a bunch of poison and expect not to feel bad. So one of the things we try to take into consideration here is addictive behaviors, and understanding that and how big of a role that plays into brain health and movement health, and understanding that everyone has an addiction. What it is it's different for everybody. Some people are addicted to Wordle, and that's their addiction. Some people are addicted to coffee, and that's their addiction. Some people are addicted to nicotine. Some people are addicted to marijuana. And the number of people I have heard say, well, no, I could stop any time. And then when they actually do stop, they're like, oh, crap, I actually was addicted. I had no idea. It would probably surprise you. Some people are addicted to donuts. I can think of one in particular, Mr. Cookie Monster, Donut Monster himself, which is fine. Like, everybody has their thing, and it is what it is, but we have to be cognizant of that and try to make adjustments within the diet, within the overall consumption, health things to enhance performance outcomes and minimize the bad stuff going in.
Yeah. And I think it's important to understand too that, if you struggle with some of those things or do some of those things, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be like bad at sports or in pain all the time or anything like that. But if you're dealing with an injury or you're trying to improve your performance, like everything in relation to brain health that we've talked about has to tie into that, right? And if you're already at a high level, that's awesome. But if you haven't taken some things out and started really taking a look at your brain, like there's probably a lot more to get out of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Certainly we for a lot of the addiction stuff and the other mental health counseling stuff, we have a variety of professionals that we will refer to who specialize in those things. But a lot of it is we just kind of uncover it the first time and say, hey, maybe this is a problem. Would you like to get help with this? And so part of our goal is just helping people recognize maybe it's not the best behavior or the most helpful thing to be doing, so that we can get them what they need to maximize their overall potential and output.
In terms of brain health, anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention or bring up, or do you feel pretty good about this?
I think that we could. We could probably do a party time talk on each individual thing.
Maybe we will.
Maybe we will. But I think that's a pretty good overview of a lot of the things we do.
Yeah. And we would like to showcase a lot of those things on social media and everything else, just showing people what we can do here, what's available, what's out there. Because some of the things we do here is a little bit different than other places. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next time.